Discover your inner strength now. In the quiet county of Maplewood, tucked between rolling cornfields and a slow, winding river in the American Midwest, life moved at a pace that felt both comforting and confining. The county courthouse stood at the center of town, its white columns weathered by decades of sun and rain, watching silently as generations passed by. For most people, Maplewood was a place you were born into, lived in, and rarely left. For Ethan Carter, it was both home and a reminder of everything he had not yet become. Ethan grew up on the edge of the county, in a small wooden house his grandfather had built with his own hands after returning from the war. His father worked long hours at the grain elevator, and his mother managed a local diner where everyone knew her name. From the outside, Ethan's life looked stable, even ordinary. But inside, he carried a constant sense of doubt. He often felt invisible, as if his dreams were too quiet to matter in a world that rewarded louder voices and bolder moves. After graduating from the local high school, Ethan took a job at the county road department. Every morning, he drove the same dusty routes, checking signs, filling potholes, and trimming back overgrown trees. The work was honest, but it felt temporary, like a waiting room he had been sitting in for too long. He told himself that one day he would do something more, something meaningful, yet that day never seemed to arrive. Fear of failure held him tighter than the familiar comfort of routine. One autumn evening, after a long day of work, Ethan stopped by the diner to pick up his mother. The air smelled of coffee and fried onions, and the low hum of conversation filled the room. On the bulletin board near the counter, a faded flyer caught his eye. It announced a county-wide volunteer project to rebuild the old river bridge that had been damaged by spring floods. The bridge had once connected two halves of Maplewood, but now it stood broken, a symbol of neglect and hesitation. The county commissioner had written a short note on the flyer, asking for volunteers to help with planning, labor, and coordination. Ethan stared at it longer than he meant to. Something about the broken bridge felt familiar. It mirrored the gap he felt between who he was and who he wanted to be. On impulse, before he could talk himself out of it, he tore off one of the contact tabs and slipped it into his pocket. The first meeting took place in the courthouse basement, where folding chairs were arranged in uneven rows. Farmers, shop owners, teachers, and a few teenagers filled the room, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Ethan sat quietly near the back, listening as ideas were shared and debated. When the commissioner asked if anyone had experience with structural planning or logistics, the room fell silent. Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding, then slowly raised his hand. He spoke about his work with the road department, about understanding load limits and safety measures. His voice shook at first, but as he continued, something steadier took over. People listened. Some nodded. For the first time in years, Ethan felt seen. He left the meeting that night with a small role in the project and a strange sense of energy he hadn't felt before. Weeks turned into months as the bridge project gained momentum. Ethan found himself coordinating schedules, solving unexpected problems, and mediating disagreements. There were days when he felt overwhelmed, when mistakes made him question his abilities. One afternoon, after a delivery delay threatened to push the project behind schedule, Ethan sat alone by the river, staring at the broken structure. Doubt crept back in, whispering that he wasn't cut out for this responsibility. As the sun dipped low, an elderly man approached, leaning on a cane. It was Mr. Harold Jenkins, a retired engineer, who had lived in Maplewood all his life. He told Ethan stories about the original bridge, about how it had been built during hard times by people who had little more than determination. "Strength," Mr. Jenkins said softly, isn't about never doubting yourself. It's about choosing to move forward even when you do. Those words stayed with Ethan. He realized that inner strength wasn't something you either had or didn't have. It was something you discovered through action, through persistence, through facing discomfort instead of avoiding it. The next day, he returned to the site with renewed focus, addressing the delay and rallying the team. The project brought the county together in unexpected ways. Families donated meals, local businesses offered supplies at reduced costs, and students volunteered after school. Ethan became a familiar figure on the site, known for his calm problem-solving and quiet leadership. He still felt fear at times, but it no longer controlled him. Instead, it became a signal that he was pushing beyond his old limits. When the bridge was finally completed, the county organized a small opening ceremony. The new structure stood strong, its wooden beams and steel supports reflecting both modern care and old-fashioned craftsmanship. As the ribbon was cut and people crossed from one side to the other, applause echoed across the river. Ethan stood near the edge, watching children run across the bridge, their laughter filling the air. In that moment, Ethan understood that the bridge was more than a physical connection. It represented what could happen when a person chose to step forward despite uncertainty. He had not transformed overnight into someone fearless or perfect. He was still the same person from Maplewood County, still learning, still growing. But he had discovered something vital within himself, the courage to act. Life after the bridge project did not suddenly become easy. Challenges remained, and new doubts occasionally surfaced. Yet Ethan faced them differently now. He enrolled in evening classes related to civil planning, supported by a small county scholarship. He began mentoring younger workers at the road department, encouraging them to speak up and trust their abilities. Maplewood County continued its quiet rhythm, but for Ethan, everything felt subtly changed. He no longer waited for the right moment to begin living fully. He understood that inner strength was not a destination but a daily practice, shaped by choices, effort, and resilience. Each time he crossed the bridge, he was reminded that the power to move forward had always been within him, waiting to be discovered. And so, in a small American county where not much seemed to change, one person's decision to believe in himself created ripples that touched an entire community. The lesson was simple yet profound. When you choose to discover your inner strength now, you don't just change your own life, you help build bridges for others to cross as well.